So we were set up 15 years ago to do nothing less than change the world. We exist to benefit the lives of young people. We're a marketing agency and a social enterprise. And not only to benefit the lives of young people, but to prove that both a profit and a purpose model can work and change the way that business is done around the world forever. So if you're going to say, what is Livity? I mean, we have over the years called ourselves a million different things. But in a nutshell, Livity, based in Brixton and across the UK, and also based in South Africa and across the African continent, are three things if you were going to try and define it. And a marketing agency, a publisher, and a youth network. And it's really the symbiosis of all of those three things which makes us unique. Interestingly, with Livity, the kind of work that we do and the fact, the methodology of how we share our work has kind of given us a number of different ways that we really understand how we impact people at a very kind of personal level. But also there's a huge amount of work that we're doing at the moment around counter-extremism, around political engagement, and actually it's really helped us to define some key things, which I thought would be interesting to share before I talk too much more about Livity. And I'm sure this will resonate with many of you who are working in kind of creative enterprises across the world. But at the center of every young person's identity is the need to connect, the need to feel part of something and have the freedom to express yourself. And that's what it means to belong. And belonging is absolutely critical in terms of bringing people, not just young people, on a journey with you into the world. And without belonging, bad things do happen. And we're seeing it certainly in the UK with the rise of Islamist extremism, with the rise of the far right, and even the impact that Brexit's happening. But really interestingly, and this is a core piece of work that we've been doing at the moment, we know that to achieve genuine belonging, it's necessary for young people 4 key things: to feel empowered by your own identity, to be able to identify with others, to be able to access skills and opportunity, and have the freedom and ability to express yourself. And actually, that's done through a huge amount of qual and quant research that we've done, but it's also implicit in the work that we've spent 15 years working directly with young people on. And so those 4 things really come into play in terms of the way that we interact with young people, both on a micro and a macro level. And really, for us, creativity is the best route out of isolation, the glue to the community, and the beginning of belonging. So when we talk about creativity, we talk about it in a number of different ways. There's a Gordon Brown quote up there: "We've changed the world before and we'll change it again." And as I say, that is, we set out to do nothing less as an organisation. And that's both in the micro way that we work with young people. So there's a young girl here called Sinead who was excluded from multiple schools and who spent 4 years working with us on a number of different programmes. And in 2012 was Deputy Lambeth Youth Mayor, ran with the Olympic torch and is now studying neuroscience at university. And we take those 10,000 plus stories of young people that have worked directly with us, hold them very much close to our hearts. But also the important thing for us is the macro impact that we have as a business. So Barclays is one of our long-term clients, and we're influencing the way that they communicate with young people, and we're innovating them as a business. And lastly, at an even more macro level, thinking about the impact that co-creating genuinely with your audience can have on things like public policy. So we're shaping the way that Public Health England have approached their preventative health strategy for young people. And when I say we have a million more stories like it, we genuinely do. So how do we do that? Well, we share, this sounds very simple, and it was really interesting to hear Ruth say that this is inspired by space, and space is incredibly close to our heart. We share our physical and digital space with young people every day. So the 60 of us that are based in Brixton are augmented by anywhere between 5, 10, 20, 50 other young people who are in our lives every day, and that's working on projects directly for us, with us, or potentially just running their own interesting, crazy businesses out of our space. And that's incredibly, that mutual exchange of benefits that we have from working directly with young people gives us energy, and it also gives us the competitive advantage because we aren't a funded organisation, we are a commercial organisation. And to do that, we have clients. And we have a number of clients who come to us with really difficult challenges to solve. And whether that is how do you curb the rise in young people and their attitudes towards pornography or sexting, or internet safety, or a number of different things. We make things that young people genuinely love and need because we are co-creating them with their audience. We can turn things that feel like very dry subject into things that young people want to interact with and actually love being part of and will take on themselves. A couple of examples of that, anything from Google coming to us with a challenge on how do we increase digital skills in the UK, and rather than doing a big campaign around that, we actually physically are changing the face of the creative industries by creating programs where young people are kind of from emerging talent and diverse backgrounds coming on a long-time journey with us, and as I say, physically changing the face of the creative industries, which is incredibly undiverse in the UK. Through to political movements, both in South Africa and one that will be launching next week with us here called Undivided, which is in a post-Brexit Britain, how young people can actually come together if they were on the Leave or the Remain side, or actually completely apolitical, how they can come together to be at the negotiating table with a very, very clear set of demands. So again, anyone that's coming to our space tomorrow will meet some of the young, amazing young people that are behind this. So those are the kind of things that through co-creation, through sharing our space with young people, we understand how important specific issues are, and we can actually just go and make them happen. Through to just doing really, really brilliant creative work. And anyone here that's in a creative organisation knows the challenge of balancing the things that you know you need to do with client challenges. And so the kind of work that we do for clients like Cancer Research, which is how do we look at things like the tobacco industry and denormalising that. And actually when you work with young people, and they can actually say 2 fingers up at the tobacco industry. So really interesting kind of creative work that you only get from sharing your space and co-creating with young people. Through finally to actually creating our own platforms and opportunities for young people, young dancers, young musicians, young filmmakers to have a platform themselves. So this is a really interesting new channel that, again, I can share later called Street Player. So in a nutshell, I guess, for me and for all of us, co-creation has such a myriad of benefits. As you can see, I mean, it has a benefit. We are a business still standing 15 years later trying to prove a different model. So the co-creation model of doing work differently from a creative and advertising and marketing industry perspective is probably best exemplified in the number of competitors we now have in our space, which is we take as a full compliment, but is none less as challenging. It's also really interesting from the type of work that we can do and the awards that we have. But most interestingly, it's in the effect that has directly on young people, on the skills and the abilities and the alumni, essentially, which we look at every day, and they're now running businesses and on TV and doing amazing things in their own right. And so for us, I guess there's probably 3 things that if 15 years worth of co-creation has taught us. That is that if you trust young people, they become trustworthy. If you give them responsibility, they become responsible. And most importantly for us, if you can instill confidence and a sense of purpose in belonging in young people, they will thrive. And I think I wanted to leave you guys all, before I have questions, with one short film of probably our longest standing project. And it is, again, directly linked to space. So again, one of those really difficult challenges where we were challenged several years ago to come up with something as a legacy to the Olympics of 2012. And so we spent the last 7 years running a programme called Somewhere To, which matches 2 of the UK's most underused resources: space, disused space, and young people, and looking at the magical things that can happen when you give young people the space and the freedom to be able to express themselves and do things, and whether that is journeys that young people have gone on, skills that they have learned, the thousands and thousands of businesses that have been started in a specific time where there has been a huge unemployment programme for young people. But I think I wanted to leave you with a really short film of a particular space which you may well recognise because it's fairly well known, but it also probably exemplifies the way that we approach not only young people as absolutely fantastic voice for the future, but also in terms of how we co-create everything with them. So I'm going to leave you with this short film before I have any questions.
We have a duty of care to share our spare space that we live in and don't always use. And I have a dream that at some point soon, this duty we have becomes realised.
We're in a crisis that's crippled our creatives and our pens, mics, paintbrushes. The crisis is this: we have nowhere to go, nowhere for our creative seeds to be sown.
You've built buildings to become derelict and let usable space go to waste. So we say, put innovative energy into creating what we already have. Think it through. Ask not what space can do for you, but what you can do for our space, because we need space.
But we also need to leave our sofas. need to rise above the games consoles and abandon our telephones.
It said that we're lazy, so prove them wrong.
Show that we are not a nation of couch potatoes, but instead use passion and ability to set space free from the constraints of emptiness.
And when we've put down our mobiles and switched off our TVs, we'll remind you that we need our own spaces so we can explore. So tell us.
Will you open your door?
Thanks very much. I think we'll have questions later. Thank you.